We want to know if there's any wayward traveler who may have lost their lives and is trying to connect with other humans. Hello guys, welcome into the I Have My Doubts channel. My name is Stephen Hyder, this is my wife.
I'm Kim Hyder.
And today we want to bring a topic to you that's fairly interesting for us personally because we live in Guilford County, North Carolina, the place where this story is going to take place. So what we're going to talk about tonight is this idea of the vanishing hitchhiker. This is something that permeates American culture, even really supersedes American culture. I mean, it goes back, if you read some accounts, to the horse and buggy days of some of similar accounts of these things happening. But you guys know the classic idea. The distressed woman in a white dress or a dress period that signals you down for help, and then either when you turn around to give her help, she vanishes, or upon reaching your destination, she vanishes. It's that same classic story. But today we're going to talk about Lydia's Bridge. It's a place out by High Point, North Carolina, pretty close to where Kim and I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we're going to basically dive down deep into whether or not the concept and the idea of the vanishing hitchhiker is a real deal. Is this something that really happens, or is this just people telling stories to one another? All right, Joe, let's get to the actual story. The following account of events comes from Nancy Roberts' 1959 Illustrated Guide to Ghost and Mysterious Occurrences in the Old North State. Upon writing her book, Miss Roberts runs into a gentleman by the name of Burke Hardison. Burke goes on to tell Nancy about a story that happened to him back in the 1920s. While attending school at North Carolina State University, at the end of a semester, he would begin a journey back to his house just for relaxation and just to kind of recover from that semester. And as he sets out, it's a rainy, foggy night, and he's driving along what used to be the old US 70 highway. As Mr. Hardison gets closer and closer to his home, he comes across this bridge that today it's commonly referred to as Lydia's Bridge. And upon driving towards this bridge, he starts to notice the silhouette of a figure, a female figure. And as the headlights kind of get onto this silhouette of this figure, he can start to make out a dress. And he sees that, oh wow, this young lady is walking in this foggy, wet atmosphere in a dress. She's clearly, stranded or needs help. Finally, she sees him, she starts to wave him down, and he obliges and he pulls off to the side of the road. Mr. Hardison encounters the young lady, they talk. Who knows what's said there, but obviously he agrees to give this young lady a ride back to her house. Yeah, she enters the car, they pull away, he's driving towards her home. And finally, after, a few minutes pass by, they arrive at where this young lady lives. So Mr. Hardison gets out of his car, walks around to the passenger side, opens up the door, looks into his car, and realizes there's nobody inside the car. So, being a little confused here, Mr. Hardison says she must have really got out of this car fast and got into the house. So he says, I better go check on this, make sure she's okay. He walks up to the front door of the house, knocks on the door, and of course, the older couple that lives in the house is a little perplexed by there's this young man at their door at night. So they walk up and they, greet him pleasantly, he greets them pleasantly, and, he apologizes for disturbing their evening. And he says, I just want to make sure that your daughter got back home safely. She asked me for a ride. But before I could really get around to open the door for her, she must have really ran out of my car fast and got to your house. Obviously, the man and the woman look at this young man, real strangely, and they say, son, I'm not too sure who you gave a ride home, but it certainly wasn't our daughter. Our daughter's been dead for over a year now. So, I turn to my wife and I ask my wife, is this a true story, or is this pure American folklore and fiction?
I mean, you hear about it a lot, right? So that's a very common story that you hear, and it comes from all sorts of places. There's even accounts like in Japan, and like, tsunami hits and cab drivers get called to take people out to where like there's no houses left or whatever, and they disappear. So it's not like a isolated incident. Um, but like, who was Lydia? Did they identify who Lydia actually was? Is there a record of Lydia ever existing? But but I mean, like, that's the thing. Was she ever real? What was her last name? Like, they lived in High Point. Where did her parents live? Why were her parents never asked for a comment?
It's a very, yeah, it's a solid. It's solid. I mean, how did we even know that her name was Lydia? Like, I don't even know that part of the account, guys, of how we even discovered that her name was Lydia. Other than that, it's the place is now called Lydia's Bridge, and it's assumed that the young lady's name is Lydia. Although I've heard from other people that actually the original account said that the girl was married. But I will add this one wrinkle to the story, and I'll re-ask my wife afterwards if maybe this provides more validity in her opinion to this story. So some investigators clearly started digging around trying to find out the answer to this question because this is a major piece of folklore in North Carolina, this entire thing. Like, people travel out to go try to find Lydia. I can't make the promise, but if we have time tonight, we might go try to find Lydia. So we're about 0.3 miles from the supposed bridge. Mind you, the destination has been altered and changed a little bit since that time, but we're going to see if someone's going to flag us down, which I highly doubt with someone behind us already. They might be doing the same exact thing we're doing. But it's going to be right up ahead here on the left. I don't see any young woman out here trying to flag us down. They say that you can see, it's right here on the left. They say that you could see the young woman in the bridge.
I got the road.
We might need to double take that one and give it a second shot. It's going to be over to your right, guys.
Looks like we're seeing a whole lot of nothing except some fence, y'all.
Yeah, there's a lot of fence, a lot of brush. We're not quite to the spot yet. It's going to be around the bend here. But they definitely said it's overgrown now. But it's right here. It's right here is the bridge itself, guys.
And here we go. You see the cones. And those little columns.
Yeah.
Or the bridge.
And now we're taking it back here.
Creepy crawlers.
Let's see if we can see anybody walking.
But here's the deal. So some researchers did finally dig up some information, and there are some pretty interesting parallels to it. So to begin with, there was a tragic accident on June 21st of 1920. It does seem that it was raining. I don't know if there was fog or not. But the account does say that the roads were wet, the roads were slick, and a young lady by the name of Annie Jackson, clearly not married, clearly not Lydia, but Annie Jackson was in a car with, I presume, either her boyfriend or a friend or somebody, and the individual lost control of the car. And as a result, unfortunately for Miss Annie, because we're talking about the 1920s, she was then thrown from the vehicle and she tragically passed away. What's really interesting is that in today, the old Lydia's Bridge is no longer a functioning road along High Point Road. And this is where all this took place off of High Point Road. It's no longer a functioning bridge there, but you can go across the new bridge and you can see the old bridge. And apparently, the site of this accident where Annie Jackson's death occurred, unfortunately, is not very far from the presumed Lydia's Bridge. So I guess you could say from some sense, it would make sense that people would find this young lady pretty close to Lydia's Bridge if she was traveling back home and the accident occurred pretty close to said bridge. But obviously there's the obvious part of her name is not Annie, her name's not Lydia, her name's not Mary, it's actually Annie. So, how do you feel? Does that bring any validity to the story at all? Do you think that, how do you feel about knowing that piece of information added in?
I mean, it definitely brings a little more light to the story that somebody did die on a bridge in that vicinity where it could, if that was a thing and ghosts were real and that was a plausible thing, it would make sense. But then I'm going to go back to why are they always wearing something white? Why?
I mean, the obvious answer here would be the symbolism of white meaning purity.
Maybe. I mean, it could be true. Look, who am I to say that ghosts are or are not real? I think the fact that they can track an actual tragic accident to that area definitely provides some truthfulness to the story that what's his name, Hardison, Mr. Hardison, reported to the author. But who knows? I mean, maybe it is true. You know.
Mm-hmm. I still think there's a lot of inconsistencies in the story. I can look past the name because I mean the name could be lost in translation over time, but I don't mean literally lost in translation, but figuratively. But at the same time, like also his date though that he gave to Nancy Roberts was 1924, and in the story, and mind you, it could be a huge game of telephone where the time frame is changing by each telling, but his occurred in 1924. The newspaper clipping is from 1920. It's close. It definitely makes you go, but it's still a 4-year difference. It's a, it's not 1 year ago that this tragic accident, could, like I said, could be a giant game of telephone. It is ironically very close, though. I will give it credit. He's saying that in the, mid to 1920s, he's driving home from NC State University and, getting close to where today Lydia's Bridge is. A young woman flags him down for a ride and disappears, vanishes in his car. Like, it's definitely a little spooky.
Yeah, but let me play this off of you, right? So we're old enough to say, and when we think back to years, right? We might get the years off a little bit. It's entirely possible that, let's see, he submitted his story to her in what, 1959?
Yeah.
So it would have been in the mid to late 1950s, saying, because that was probably when the book was published. So saying maybe it took her a couple of years to write the book. So somewhere between 1955 and 1959, he submitted this story to her. If he's saying that it occurred in 1924, that's like a 30-year difference.
It's true.
So in the span of 30 years, he could have been off by some years. You know what I mean? He could have been like, well, it could have been 1924, But like, how many times did he travel back and forth, to and from NC State? Go Pack, right? I mean, who knows? Nobody just goes to NC State for 1 year, right? Like, they travel back and forth. He could have gone for games. He could have gone for school. If you live in the area, if you live in the Raleigh area, which we did live in the Raleigh area for quite some time, you travel back and forth to NC State whether you go there or not. Like, there's always something going on. So, who's to say that his timeline wasn't just off a little bit?
Possible. Anyways, this is the story, part number 1. I got a feeling that throughout the course of this channel, we're going to run across quite a bit of these vanishing hitchhikers. But part 1, vanishing hitchhikers. So we'll throw it over to you guys in the comments section.
What do you think? Is it real or?
Nah. My guess is it's probably not real. My wife here.
Who knows? Jury's still out. I guess I need to see Lydia or Annie to be certain.
All right, guys. Until the next time, leave your comments down below. We appreciate y'all tuning in. And we'll catch you guys on the next video.
Bye.